Let's call the February 18th Board of Directors meeting to order at 9:22. My apologies for being late. And with that, roll call.
We have Director Clement,
Yep.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilkins is absent today, Director Hansberg, and Director Wilson.
Here, it's firing.
Yes, no.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, does anybody wish to make a public comments? If so, your time limit would be 5 minutes. Do we have anybody online?
We have staff online, but no one to make a public comment.
Okay. Any written comments? Okay. With that, let's move on to review and approval and adopt the agenda. Do any of the directors wish to adjust or remove any items on the consent agenda for regular? I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
In favor? Aye. Aye.
Since Dale is remote, I have.
Oh, we have to do a roll call. That's correct.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Hansberg, yes. Director Cox,
Yes.
and Director Wilson.
Yes. Motion is approved. And now I believe we have professional achievements, awards, anniversaries, and staff acknowledgements.
Yeah, I'll be presenting this item in lieu of Vicky today. She got waylaid by NDOT way over the hill, so she is coming up today. So a couple of really significant milestones for some of our staff. I'll start with our new employee. Bill Sibley is our new safety and compliance administrator. We stole him from Nevada, OSHA, yes. And got a lot of experience and we're really getting him healed up and he's got a lot on his plate right now. So, we love having him. He's a good fit for the agency. So, should be a great experience having him on board and build. We have some achievements and promotions. Scott Fleming is no longer our senior engineer. He is our technical services manager. So, we're very excited to have that position filled and now start looking at how we can get that department fully rounded out and functional. And Dan Underwood, one of our operators, received his grade 5 treatment plant operator certification, which is the highest you can achieve. And it's an exceptionally tough test. So congratulations to him. It makes it a lot easier for, we have a grade 5 facility and technically the person that is here needs to have that level of certification. So it's helpful to have more people that have it. So big congrats to him. And we have a couple of really substantial anniversaries. We've got Brandon Diamond, who is in the audience. He is our operations supervisor. He is celebrating 20 years at the agency, which is so big congratulations to you, Brandon. Thank you. And we also have Dusty, we call him Gilmore. He is also celebrating his 20 years. Unfortunately, I believe he's out sick today. Is that correct? Yes. So we'll make sure to pat him on the back when we see him for everyone. And then we have another substantial anniversary, 5 years for Luke Swan, our IT supervisor. So he is not here today, but big congrats to him as well. So, and that is what we have on the list.
Great. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you. Hopefully in 20 years, we'll be celebrating your 20 years. Which, by the way, congratulations on 20 years. So thanks for everything you've done.
Right.
Yeah. We really do appreciate it.
I'm not gonna be here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be here. Yeah, I made that decision, so. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Any public comments at this point? Any online? Written? So we
Move
need.
to approve.
Second.
We'll need a roll call.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Cox, second by Director Hansberg, for a consent agenda. Director Fleming,
Yes.
Director Hansberg. Yes. Director Cox
Yes.
and Director Wilson.
Yes. And with that, I think we move on to ratification and approval of the general fund warrants paid in December and January.
That's all part of the
That's part of the
consent.
consent.
Oh, okay.
They were-
All done.
So we're on. number
I'm still
one.
shaking from the drive. There are some really bad drivers in this world.
Oh, angry.
There were like people like spun out like parked, diagonally halfway hanging out. I was like, oh my God. So shocking. Okay. And then moving on to the regular agenda. Informational update on the agency bond issuance. And I believe that's you, Liz.
That is me, absolutely. And this will be one of my first times participating in this virtual experience. So I just want to make sure that you all are seeing the slides because we are not seeing them on this side.
Yes, we see slides.
Okay, perfect. So you should be looking at one now that says bond issuance update transaction summary. This lays out all the legalese, but I'm here to say congratulations. On January 14th, we went out in the market and we issued debt. We issued $21.7 million, raising almost $25 million for us. There was a cost of issuance that we discussed that was approximately $300,000. The green highlighted box is highlighted for two things. One, I wanted to tell you that the true interest cost, that's how we measure how much this debt is costing us, wound up being 3.22%. When we costed this out and brought estimates to the board, we gave an estimate of 3.52. So we were able to beat that estimate. That's fantastic. The bond closed on January 28th, was funded, and then literally moments later was reinvested so that that money can continue earning. And we'll actually have $25.1 million at the end to be able to contribute towards capital projects. If you'll turn to the next slide, this one is specific to answer a question that Dale asked in the last meeting. There were 13 bidders. I will admit I woke up very early in the morning stressed that there wouldn't be 13 bidders, but by 8:30 our time, I'm happy to report that these were the 13 folks that were interested, and they will maintain interest in our future issuances. So it was a great success story. And then if you want to take a look at the last slide, this is one that we'll again continue to talk about, but this shows that our annual debt service right now for the combined 2020 debt that's retiring and our new debt service is about $4 million for the next 2 fiscal years. After that, it slides down to about 1.7 million, giving us that capacity. That white space that you see right there is our future capacity to be able to pay debt service for our upcoming projects and potential future issuances. And that, in a nutshell, is TTSA FA's first bond issuance. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Lay it on me.
Can anybody in that list that you just showed, Lizzie, can anybody else jump on the bandwagon and start participating in our issuance?
They absolutely can. When we, for our next issuance, not for this one. This one's closed and went to Jeffries and they took all of it. But when we do future issuances, we'll contact these folks. And if there are other people that call the agency in the next few months, that's a common phone call that I get to say, hey, next time you are going to be out in the market, please send us your official statement. And we'll make sure to do that. That's some of the work Stephen Gortler does for us.
Okay, so you said that we're gonna go back out to bid again, and what was the date?
We're not going to go back out to bid for this deal. The 2026 bond deal is completed and done, and we got our $25 million to set in the bank and put towards capital projects. But as you know, $25 million isn't going to be enough to fund our CIP that we're going to talk about later in this meeting. So when we go back out into the market, maybe we'll issue more bonds, maybe as part of a WIFIA funding, right? We're still developing that finance plan, but it is very likely that we will go back out in the market and issue additional tranches of debt.
Okay, in the list of participants that you just showed will all be on the wagon.
They will be notified that we'll be back out in the market, and we would expect them to be just as interested the next time as they were this time.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
Thank you.
Any other
Lindsay.
questions about the bond deal?
That's it.
I would
for
like-
me.
I would like to thank Bert for stepping up and signing for me. Much appreciated. Your name is on it, so. And one quick question, Liz, that doesn't look like Verdi behind you.
Right now it's a virtual background. Definitely weather was a factor, but we're still working on recovery down here in the Bay Area. I am happy to report it snowed here too. You guys are talking about feet and inches. We maybe had a centimeter, but it doesn't often happen down here in the Bay. But Mount Diablo is covered in snow this morning. It was great.
And it was really good news to hear that it came in at 3.22.
Yes.
That's
Stephen and I were very
big
happy.
difference.
Stephen's very conservative with his projections. And again, not going to deliver something we can't meet, but it's always great when we can beat that out in the market.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Any further questions from the board? Any public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to information and discussion on the agency quarterly financial plan update.
Still me standing at the virtual podium. All right, well, let's take a few minutes and talk about FY26 and where we're at right now. Last quarter, I brought a quarterly update and we were fresh into the fiscal year. Now we have a little bit more experience behind us and we know a little bit more about where the year is going to end. In front of you right now is the executive summary by fund. It's table 18 from the budget book. I will give you a little precursor heads up that as we evolve and continue to talk about this report, next year it will look a little bit different, but for now we're still living in these fund worlds. Overall, this chart projects that at the end of the fiscal year, June 30, we will be at about $39 million in cash balance. It takes into consideration what our projected revenues are to come in the door for the remainder of the year by fund. That's that second line that you see on the chart to show you total revenue. It also projects the remainder of the year expenditures to go out the door, giving us a fund balance. One key change here, and we'll talk about it in a couple of slides ahead, is that there's a reduction in the anticipated spending for Fund 6, that Rehab and Rehabilitation Upgrade Fund. At Q1, we had been projecting to spend the full $12 million budget. I've scaled that back now to spend about half, about $6.5 million. And again, we'll talk about that in a future slide. Any questions on the executive summary before we talk a little bit more in detail by fund about revenues and expenditures? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So here we take a look at general fund in its entirety. We're anticipating coming in a little bit above our revenue projections. We're continuing to see a great fund interest world. I do tend to be very conservative in projecting those and budgeting those because they are not a guarantee, but we are projected to slightly beat budget, seeing those continued returns. Other revenue has that variance from budget. Again, that was the place that we parked that OPEB reimbursement from last year for right now. We don't anticipate that in the run rate. We just think we'll meet that $75.5 million budget there. Taking a look at the expenditure side, there's really two stories to tell. We are seeing a savings in salaries and wages, and we have another slide to talk a little bit more about that. But we did add some budget for some new positions. We're also seeing some vacancies that were delayed a little bit longer. So I'll provide a little more detail on that savings projection on the next slide. But still the comment here, you'll notice that there's a savings projected in office expenses and contractual services. The contractual services are directly related to chemicals. Based on operations, we're using less chemicals than we had anticipated at budget time. And on the office side, we had added money in for some cubicles to do some reorging and make some office space on the admin side. And we were able to do it much more efficiently than that. So that's why you see those savings recognized there. Before we talk more about the labor savings, are there any questions on the general fund revenues or expenditures as you see them here?
Nope.
All right, let's go to the next slide. This is where the story is. So you saw that there was quite a large number projected as an underrun on the salaries and wages side. So what you see in front of you here are a couple of categories and colors. Sit tight with me on the color part. But if you look at the first category, these positions were added to the FY26 budget and they weren't filled. That comes in a little under $500,000 in savings recognition for that. Then we had some vacant positions in the next category. The safety and compliance administrator, as you just heard, and I'm so happy to report, was filled as of January. So we saw about 6 months savings from that vacancy of the position, as well as the other items listed there. There were other impacts as well. We had a vacant senior engineer, or will have a vacant senior engineer for the second half of the fiscal year. Our tech services manager was acting as an AGM while we had the retiring AGM going out. We also had a vacant tech services manager that we were filling. So all of that coupled together drives us to that underrun in the projections. The item that you see at the very bottom, the potential reductions for FY27, the management team has been putting their heads together and taking a look at needs going forward and really trying to assess that labor budget. And these positions have been identified as potential reductions to the FY27 budget, as they won't be filled positions. Questions about the salary and wage detail, the potential savings?
Yeah, if you could clarify for me, so the positions in blue are considered potential reductions, all of them?
Yes, they will most likely not be included in the FY27 budget request. They've been vacant throughout FY26, some of them even longer, or they were added to the FY26 budget, like the engineering tech position. That classification wasn't a part of our budget before. We thought we were going to need that going into FY26. We're assessing that we won't need it going into FY27.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Further questions?
No, we already beat the shit out of this to the finance committee meeting.
You did? Okay,
We did.
I appreciate that.
I wanted to add a few more blue lines, but you know, I wasn't allowed.
I also see that my typo of vacation positions is still in there. So that was great. Thank you. Love when you can catch a good typo live. All right, let's talk about the capital funds if there's no other questions on Fund 10.
Okay,
So this is a quick update of the wastewater capital reserve funds. Again, we're anticipating about $700,000 in that priority one expenditure to continue for the digestion improvement project. And then improving physical security is something that we're talking about through this quarter. We anticipate spending it now, but we may know more at the third quarter and we'll talk about it then. You take a look at the next slide. It's the same summary, but it's for Fund 6. Give it a second to update on my side. You guys see Fund 6?
No.
No, yeah.
There we go. There we go. So same story here, but from last quarter, we were projecting that full $12 million budget being spent. We've dialed that back to about $6.5 million, focusing on digestion improvement. We call it the TRI rehab in the budget book. It's called the River Crossing Gravity Main Project, the Nutrient Removal Project, and the Upgrade Network Project that you'll hear a little bit more about in the next item or two. From a capital spending standpoint, are there any questions?
good.
All right, we'll take it. Then the last slide is the important one, review and comment on the quarterly financial plan update. Are there any additional comments?
I have none. Cool. I think we're good.
Cool.
All right. I don't think we have any public comments. Very good. Now we get to the fun stuff.
Ooh, I'll take
I
that.
believe you're up, Scott.
I don't know if Liz should be upset by that comment or not.
Well, no.
I won't take it personal.
I mean it because I love all this technical stuff. Man. I don't have a clue what it is, but.
It's good on the slide. So, yeah, here today, Board of Directors, Scott Fleming, Senior Engineer and Technical Services Manager, to present to you a recommendation by staff for approval for the network upgrades project, engineering design contract. So what I have up there on the screen right now, that is a map of the facility, and you see 3 different colors shown. This project entails specifically the blue mapped a single mode fiber routing plan. So what is this? What are we talking about? So basically back in 2021, Jacobs Engineering performed an assessment of our facilities through a SCADA IT master plan. In that there were findings that made recommendations to upgrade and modernize the backbone of our agency's infrastructure to support our SCADA systems and servers. So the way I look at this, if you look at like mechanical equipment, pumps, mechanisms, rake arms as kind of like the muscles, right, that really do the treatment process. The brains of the operation is more or less our SCADA system. In a sense, that's how SCADA controls and data acquisition. That's how we work with what we call our HMIs, or human machine interfaces. These are the screens that you see that the operators control and use to communicate back and forth with the equipment. Otherwise, they'd have to go out and manually do things by hand, Stone Ages per se. So with that in mind, a lot of our infrastructure went in the early 2000s. And so like anything with technology, it has a typical useful service life. And part of that is the actual communications cabling in our existing kind of patched together framework of a system we have. And so we have a lot of multi-mode fiber Ethernet cable that's at the point where it no longer supports the necessary systems that we need moving forward with servers and programmable logic controllers, or PLCs. So with that, they identified a plan to replace this, as well as provide security enhancements to the plant to back up those servers so they're more defensible from outside sources or vulnerabilities. And so with that, this project is really the first phase of a multi-phase approach to get that backbone, if you want to call it that, into the plant with what they would consider as a self-healing ring. And the theory is if you sever one of these fiber optic cables in the ground, you don't lose communication to facilities outright. So let's say we have a contractor on site with one of these heavy construction projects, they come out and they dig a trench and they pull one of these fiber cables by accident, then we'd still be able to communicate in the ring typology loop by basically going the other way with those signals. So this project is really looking at laying in that first set of fiber optic cables. Plant here, as you see going on behind this right now. Some other touch points I wanted to talk about. So we've already had Jacobs previously do the conceptual design report where this was laid out with staff input. A lot of effort went in from Paul and his team with Ryan as well. So I just want to give a shout out that this wasn't something cooked up in a box and then presented to you, but this has actually been years of painstaking work to lay out a level of effort that was quite large for where to put the server racks and the necessary clusters. So we have a strategy long-term for the plant that is going to service not just now, but also with these proposed improvements we're looking to do over the next few years with specifically nutrient removal. And that's why you see kind of the green color coded line on the map that represents the final phase of the 3 to tie in those new facilities we're planning on building. What else? So the second phase, I didn't talk about much, but digestion improvements is shown in orange. That's 2/3 of the routing. The most expensive segments are going to be in green because there's going to have to be some trench work required, whereas the first phase, or the blue phase we're talking about today, is primarily going to utilize existing cable trays down the corridors with hopefully no invasive or trench work required. Paul and Ryan have identified some existing conduit in a sense that runs between the digester building / building 27 electrical room and over to the dewatering building. And so they're going to try to reutilize those spare conduits to pull fiber through, assuming they're large enough in size for the size fiber we need to put in so that we can tie in our dewatering building without doing trench work to keep costs down. So it was a really nice cost saving thought that went into that for staff. So with that in mind, staff knew we needed to do final design, take it from that conceptual design work through and final design to be able to bid this out for a public contracts work. In order to do that, we need to get plans and specs. And so we were we've been doing a qualification-based selection process for a lot of these projects historically. This is one of those unique ones where the design isn't hinging on like a lot of major decision inflection points that are, we know we need to be single mode fiber cable. It's pretty straightforward. It's really only discussion points are, how does the server rack look and is laid out, or I should say, likely that the remote IO cabinets and then, yeah, the sizing of the fibers. So we went with the fee-based selections process for this project, as we weren't concerned, as long as we had qualified engineering firms that proposed that there was going to be anything to really stand out between the two designs. The scope of the project's well established, and we know where we want to run the fiber and how we want to run it. So really at this point, it's just we needed someone qualified to put together plans and specs. So with that, we reached out to a couple consultants quickly. This project was budgeted this fiscal year to start on. And so we reached out to Jacobs, who's been doing the historical work, has kind of a leg up because they've already got the insider line. They've done the ITscape master plan, the conceptual design report. We reached out to Corolla, who's laying out nutrient removal. And then there were some other firms that like expressed interest, but we never got a full scope and fee from them on it. And so with that, we're sitting here today basically recommending that we move forward with the award of the project to Jacobs Engineering. They did also provide, and I included it in here, an optional task to provide additional support services for our SCADA systems. I'd like to turn it over to Paul for a sec to talk about those optional tasks and what they potentially help us with, if you don't mind, Paul, share.
I apologize. I was distracted for that last portion. The optional tasks regarding the IT SCADA master plan.
Yeah, and how Jacobs with the project would help us with that additional 25,000.
So there's a little bit of extra money in there right now that really is kind of earmarked for our team. We're going to handle in-house all of the firewall configuration, the network switching configuration, all these different things. We're going to handle that in-house. We've got staff for that. However, there could be questions on the best means and methods to go about this, best practices and things, and this is earmarked for that. They're going to have that information that'll help set us up for the future upgrades to get those new PLCs in and make sure we're doing the right thing, not just kind of in our own little world here. We want to go by standards moving forward. We don't want to just be unique in our configuration. So that's what that's there for, primarily.
Thanks, Paul. So with that said, staff are recommending that we seek approval to enter into agreement with Jacobs Engineering Group to perform final design of the network upgrades project for $146,000 and $3 with the optional task 5 for control and MT support services in the amount of $25,015 for a total amount of $171,018 with staff authorization for up to $185,015 for 10% contingencies just on the design portion. With that, I'm open to answer your questions.
That's just for the blue part of this design?
Yep. And there is a level of, we won't expect the cost for the actual installation to follow those typical 10% rules of thumb for construction versus design costs. I wouldn't anticipate this project costing $1.6 million standing in the phase one, not by a long shot. It's just there's economies of scale with engineering. So it's what the jobs, smaller margins. That's kind of just the frame we sit in.
So 2 points for me. One, I think you called it a self-healing circuit.
Yeah, ring typology is another term, yeah.
And so if something happens, we're pretty much guaranteed that we're not going to crash. So
I mean, I don't like to make guarantees,
Well,
but
the likelihood.
the intent is right now we have facilities that are exposed. If you were to sever some of those lines, you would lose communication. We'd be back to hand control as both the station.
Okay.
So it's not that we couldn't operate the equipment. We just would not be able to communicate with or operate or control the equipment.
Yeah, I can speak to that just a little bit. I mean, there's never any guarantees, of course, like Scott's saying, but in this type of ring topology like that, you've got two connections coming from two different areas. So one would be a primary connection that it's using day in and day out, unless a failure were to occur or it detected some problem on that. All the hardware will automatically do that detection and transfer to that backup connection that's in that ring configuration. Now, currently we have more of a star topology, which has a central hub or a central node that reaches out to all those individual remote IO servers. Okay, were those if those were to be severed, we would lose that communication and we'd have to restore it some other way or go to a manual operation. That's less than desirable, and it is kind of an old world topology that we need to move away from. So because of the additional cost of doing a ring topology for everything, we'll identify throughout this process which are the most critical processes that really need that. So if it's something that is less critical, we can save a significant sum by not using that hardware and that topology layout.
And the second part is, we know there's gonna be construction and there's a risk with that. But, and I believe you assured us that this would be able to be integrated into the new construction, all those things.
The intent is while we have earth disturbing work on site, that the contractors also pay the fiber at the same time for economies of scale. So the first phase in blue are areas that don't have anticipated major construction going on with them. They're primarily indoor areas and or poles through existing conduit with no earthwork. The areas shown in orange again are primarily in existing corridors, and then green is really the bulk of that fiber install, and that is going to require trenching to do for those conduit runs, and that would be with network upgrades. So we won't complete the ring in its entirety until that. You might ask the question, well, why phase it then not? Why not just do it all at once? And there's a lot of benefits for us tying in some of those existing pieces of equipment now that are going to stay due to our concerns with risk of the aging servers. Well, not the servers so much, but the switches at this stage.
Yeah, the switches and the hardware.
And the hardware. So we want to start getting into those and putting in new cabinets, new switches now for now. Security reasons, to say the least.
One other point on that, if I may, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. One other point on that is that this really does lay the foundation for what's moving forward between digestion improvements and the nutrient removal project. Because by having these standards in place, we can feed that information back to the design consultants to say, this is what we're using and this is how we use it. So that they can incorporate that into their design in the future. So it's consistent, it's logical, and it's been well thought out in advance.
And what was the dollar figure again, Scott?
So the old, what staff are seeking approval for is authorization up to $185,000. That includes a 10% contingency on the design, but not on the support services portion of the work. As we've seen historically, and Director Wilkins has pointed out, it's nice if staff can get some level of contingency without having to come back to the board. And so for as small of an amount as that contingency relates to in the overall cost of the project, help us just ensure we capture those skills.
Okay.
Yep.
Any further questions from the board or Dale?
Yeah, I got a question. And it's both for Paul and Scott. You know, a couple of months ago, we all agreed on the design phase for this project that's we're looking at $19 million. $19 million. Now, we opened the door with Perillo and Jacobs Engineering for this design phase. Are we going to sit back every month and look at $146,000 here and $217,000 there, and what are we going to expect as a board, you guys, when we move forward with this? We okayed 19 million. Now, are we going to get, 100,000 here and 200,000 there and another 150 there as we move through this, or how are we going to keep this under control so we don't have an open wallet going through this design phase?
If you want, Scott, I can answer that. That's a fair point, Dale. I think it's important for us to kind of keep focused on what the scope of what we've asked Perillo to do is. And there is definitely an acknowledgement that there's a substantial portion of the facility that's going to have to live beyond this project. And we can't ignore that part just because we're getting the new part. So the short answer to your question is to some degree, yes, we will continue to be bringing smaller projects as we design the larger project. And and again, I think this will probably make a little more sense once we look at the CIP document and start talking about, why do these projects still exist in light of the fact that we have Corolla designing what appears to be a new facility? But this kind of thing is, this was not in scope for the design of the new facility. This is effectively the old facility, what still will be functioning for the foreseeable future and the risk to communications.
Okay, just to be clear here now, to answer my question, is this something that we're going to be dealing with month after month after month as we grind through this development process? Can we expect this kind of additional expense coming into play here as we move forward?
I wouldn't classify it as additional expense. I would say, again, once we've talked about the CIP document, these are going to be things that we will have identified long in advance and will be part of the financial plan and will be part of the overall picture on how we manage the facility. But they're not going to be surprises. They're going to be identified, they're going to be scheduled, and there's going to be risk factors associated with delaying them. So we're making decisions internally on what things get prioritized for when. Yes, Bert.
So Dale, the capital plan is next on the agenda. That'll give you all the other projects that are outside of the 19 million that these guys are contemplating over the next, 5 years or so. So I would say go through that and then we can circle back to your question potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Jason.
I just, that 19 million was a staggering amount of money for me for what we're dealing with here. And I know more than likely that it's in the realm of reality, but to a layman like myself, it's a significant amount of dough. And as we move forward with this, I just want to make sure that we're not rolling over to any of these additional expenses that are going to keep coming down the pike. And is there any way that we can have some kind of system of checks and balances with these two organizations? Because we're marching forward here, and I just want to make sure that we don't sit back and have an open checkbook for these consultants.
Dale, I think I agree 100% with what Jason and Bert just said. Is when we look at the CIP program coming up, a lot of these type of things are identified, right? And the basic component that I look at for this is that we do have systems in place that we don't need to replace at this point, that will be incorporated into what we're calling the new plant. And we've got to make sure that those systems are up to speed with what we're going to be doing. And this is one of the...
I understand where we're headed here. It's just about the cost and the money, that's going to be flying out of our organization. And it just I've got my eyeballs on this, and I just want to make sure that that we have some checks and balances as we move forward, because this is a situation where 100,000 here and 100,000 there and 200,000 here. All of a sudden, we're talking about real money.
Agreed.
No further questions.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve provide the authority to general manager to approve the contract with Jacobs Engineering at the amount that has been recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay. And with that, we need a roll call.
A motion by Director Hansberg, second by Director Clement. Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Hansberg, and Director Cox,
Yes,
Director Wilson.
Yes, motion approved. Board. Thank you, Scott.
I didn't like looking in the closet. It's kind of.
Thank you.
And with that, we move on to information and discussion on capital improvement plan. Liz?
That's it. All right, well, me again, and this will be a together presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about context, and then Scott, our technical services manager, is going to talk about the deliverable of the actual CIP document. I couldn't have teed up a better item before this discussion talking about checks and balances, because this is exactly what this process is all about, is checks and balances. So to take a little step back before we jump into the CIP, how does the CIP fit into anything that we're doing? Well, I'm going to introduce something that in my past life has been called the circle of life. You can all stop and take a moment and sing Lion King. Every time I say it, I am singing it in the back of my head. But it's the financial planning process. It's something that once it's over, you have to start again. It's ever evolving. But the purpose of it really is that check and balance that you all were just talking about, and that fiscal responsibility and compliance. The Agency Act says you all have to take a look at these things. Ordinances that the board has approved require us to have financial conversations regularly. And we have talked oftentimes in this board meeting about generations and generational impacts. We want to make sure that we're supporting that long-term sustainability, and having this financial planning process and the CIP being a part of it does just that. The board's role should be no surprise. You all have been doing it well lately. Policy and oversight, you've all approved reserve policies, fund policies, different things that are aligning all of our finances and heading us into that long-term sustainability. Approving funding by approving budget documents, and of course, rate setting and compliance. Some of the documents involved in this process, I've mentioned already, the annual budget, the CIP. We just had a quarterly financial plan review. Rates and charges are something that, you know, throughout the agency's history, we've taken a look at. We've decided to not raise rates. We've raised rates for the last 4 years, have a 5-year Prop 218 out right now. So that really needs to be embedded in that annual process, and making sure that what we're anticipating is still really where we want to head. So that was a lot of words to get us to where we need to be today. And the objective of the conversation today is to get board concurrence on the direction of this draft CIP document. You know, Dale asks questions about, are we going to keep getting these $150,000, $200,000 contracts that are in here for us to spend more capital money? Yes, but here's the roadmap that puts all of that together. Best information that we have now, and as we mature this document, we're going to include even more information. But before you today is a piece of, yes, taking a look at this circle of life here. I consider the beginning of the year, January 1, when our connection charges increase based on that ENR that you guys approved in the last ordinance. And then we head into capital improvement planning. This document really has the agency look out 5 years. What are those capital things that we need to be doing? And then what are the impacts going to be to operations? How will that feed into the next part of the cycle, which is the annual budget? We need to make sure the annual budget makes sure that our service rates are effective. We need to make sure when we're looking at our rates out for 5 years that those projections are consistent, and it feeds us back into that circle. Sometimes it's like a vicious hamster wheel, I'm not going to lie. But overall, it's a great planning process that gets us where we need to be. One thing I want to note, and we can transition to the next slide. As we talk about this capital improvement plan that is delivered by the Tech Services Department, mainly Scott, herding a bunch of cats to get all of this information together, is that you're not authorizing any project expenditures as a board. This is the agency putting its best information forward to say, this is how much we think we're going to need to spend. This is the potential impact to rates. All of those considerations. This is just authorizing the direction that the agency wants to head. You know, we have a mission of environmental stewardship through advanced wastewater treatment. All of these projects and the narrative that supports this document are projects and investments into capital assets to do that very thing, and to keep us going into those future generations. So Scott's going to step up to the podium now, and he's going to take you through the actual CIP document to cover the background, how we structured and developed it. There is a piece missing. This can be a very big conversation, and we talked about finances in one lens earlier in this meeting. So next meeting, we'll bring this document back and I'll overlay the financial plan on it and talk about how many millions we'll get together to be able to fund this. So that piece will not be talked about today, but Scott will also walk you through the program and project details, and then the appendices that were put together to reconcile the prior documents that exist to get us to where we are today. Before Scott talks a little bit more about the document, are there any questions on the context or what may be missing from the document?
Nope.
All right, Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Liz. Good morning again, Board of Directors, Scott Fleming, Technical Services Manager. Yeah, so I think, as you all are aware, we've had a capital improvement plan for years. Historically, it's lived in the annual budget. This is the first year we've actually broken out the document separately. I think there's a lot of benefits for doing that. Both Liz and I were like-minded in that thought process. And if you look at most of the other agencies, special utility districts, et cetera, around the state, you'll typically see these as standalone documents. I do want to preface going into this discussion that it is a snapshot in time of staff's best ability to identify and prioritize projects. So what might be current in today's discussion might be different in 6 months from now. And so with that said, I'd like to kind of move into the next slide here on the development piece. So staff get together in the fall every year, and I try to summarize this in the actual document. And we meet, we talk about the state of facilities, and we have two primary facilities as we look at it. We have our wastewater reclamation plant and our Truckee River Interceptor. And with that, there's a series of projects that have been identified over the years, both internally and externally, as needs for the agency to look at either upgrading for capacity improvements or rehabilitating. A lot of those projects were determined out of the master plan that was finalized by Corolla back in 2021, 2022 timeframe. A lot of input developing that master plan came from Mr. Mike Peak over there in operations, walking the consultant for days and days through the facilities. So these projects didn't just come out of thin air. They were things that were vetted both through an engineering consultant and our staff to be prioritized. And as you guys recall, we historically did our priorities in a 1, 2, 3 basis. Staff heard the comments from the board regarding that prioritization. I did tip my hat to it in the discussion point in the CIP about that historical approach. And instead, we've gone with a program-based approach where we break out the structure of the CIP into 3 programs, the third of which is kind of still in development with vehicle and equipment. But for the WRP and TRI, this matches the master plan and harmonizes well for those looking back at the master plan documents and knowing and tracking projects. So with that, we broke it into 2 programs, and then subsequently in each of those programs, there are projects that are synchronized, they're sequenced in a manner that goes along with the timing of the projects that best reflects or anticipates the needs of the agency moving forward over the next 5 years. I tried to maintain the identification numbers for the projects and project structures based off the master plan as well, and only created new numbers for projects that were previously created. So for WRP, I think it's over number 37, WRP 38 and onwards moving forward in the future. Those are new projects that were not in our most recent master plan that was performed. Likewise, I tried to keep the nomenclature for the TRI projects consistent with what was in the master plan as well, so all of this coordinates nicely. And that was the intent behind the structuring of the programs. I included figure maps to give people some perspective. I will state that for the water reclamation plant, that map in particular doesn't necessarily reflect the full nature of a project, but is more of its best representation on site. But for more specifics, for each of the project sheets. So with that, do you mind rolling on there? Perfect. So, with this discussion and review of the CIP, staff really have to look at our needs from both a capacity standpoint and also to condition of the facilities. The intent of this slide, Liz did a great job putting it together, but we're not trying to get you guys to look at the numbers on this slide and try to see the bottom line. That's not the goal. The goal is to show you that in the CIP, there is a summary table that overlays all of these projects over the next 5 years of fiscal year planning and what the allocated costs are currently anticipated and what ultimately each of the programs cost, and then what the bottom line for the CIP is needed to fund if we move forward with these recommendations for projects. Additionally, we're trying to, as it says, reconcile prior documents and update current needs, as well as looking at future updates. So there are projects out, and we'll get to the appendices in a minute, that are earmarked for the future, but are not in this first 5 year look ahead for it. And so just keep that in mind when you're reviewing it. Next slide there. So as Liz mentioned, the intent is that once we get some input from the board today regarding the CIP, as we would take that input as well as any potential changes that come out of today's discussion and roll it in with the developed financial plan that Liz is wrapping up to present to the board. Liz, did you want to add anything to that slide?
Nope.
Right. So, yeah, if you can keep rolling there. So this is a good example sheet. This is the big project everyone keeps talking about, kind of to Director Cox's point, we do have allocated, $19 million over the fiscal year 27 and 28, including 26. And then we have construction related cost here. And now $250 million estimate currently for the total project cost over the next 5 years was the number out of the original nutrient removal alternative process evaluation. It's a mouthful, but effectively what we did for each of these programs is we broke it down by projects, and I wanted to give more clarification because in the past, the CIP would just have a project name and a brief blurb that was a sentence or two. So this gives you guys a bit more of that purpose, priority, scope, status, cost, operational impacts, and location photos. It should be a sheet that can stand alone on its own. And if someone asks anyone from the board, staff, or the public, what does this project entail? The hope is you read the sheet and you get a scope and feel of what the project is and why. So that was something I saw at a bunch of other agencies and districts, and I was looking for here when I first started and didn't. And so this was a strong request by Liz, is to create something to this structure. And so she did a great job picking with me a couple example project sheets that we liked and kind of turning them into our own thing here. So yeah, that's the intent behind each program. You'll see project sheets for both the TRI and the WRP with each one of these. And if there isn't a sheet, then the project is not currently planned for this 5 year CIP. In the future, we'd like to stretch the CIP out further and not do it on an annual basis, but those are conversation points maybe for another day. Next slide. So yeah, I think an important thing to note here with the CIP, and something that I got input from Jason on, was we needed and Liz was not just come up with a list of projects that were from the original master plan and or determined in-house, but we also needed to take into consideration projects that are farther out in the master plan that we're not planning in this 5 year term, and provide notes on why those are not in this 5 year. And then likewise too, and I think this is probably my favorite point to take home, is what was eliminated when we did this, when we're doing this big $250 million project, what actually got lined out? And I think that's a question we ask ourselves is, to Director Cox's point, not all the projects got eliminated. Some were wrapped in, and some are still standalone projects for varying reasons. We've made that recommendation in here. And so the red table list, and I like using colors because it kind of helps everybody keep awareness. The orange table is potential future projects or projects that are on hold until we have further project definition from the large nutrient removal improvements project. And likewise, projects that are currently eliminated or have been incorporated into the nutrient removals project. So you can see there's quite a substantial list of projects there. I think there's a total of 20 of them that were either eliminated or incorporated primarily because of nutrient. So with that said,
Can I ask
yeah, I was gonna turn it over.
if you can move that slide back? Is there a dollar figure associated with Appendix B?
So it's a hard one to place for Appendix B. We could come up with the number out of the master plan, but I would keep in mind that that number was dated from pre-COVID times, and it's
Okay.
not probably accurate to what we're currently looking at. I mean,
And there was a pretty substantial evaluation in comparison in the the assessment, the alternatives assessment we did. We could probably suss some of that information out.
It'd be an interesting number to know.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things you spoke about was us having all the information, and that would be a really nice thing to say with this new plan. We've eliminated $20 million in potential.
Yeah, I think what we can do is we can take a look at the projects that were eliminated and try to put a dollar figure next to each one using current today's dollars.
Estimate.
Yeah,
I think would be fine.
The range is fine.
We can definitely use
But
the
a
existing
range.
budget.
Yeah.
I'll jump in here too. We can use the existing budget, and when we bring forward the FY27 budget, because we're kind of having a shift of how we looked at capital in the past to how we're doing it now. Our funds are going to change as well. So I'll blow your mind there as well. We'll have a reconciliation of it in that budget document. So people looking back, like when I look back 5 years ago, I'm like, why didn't anyone write that in the budget book? We're trying to capture some of those reconciling items. So we'll be
Right.
able to at least identify the existing budget that's in the 27 budget today. I'm sorry, the 26 budget today.
not to create more work for myself, but is that something you'd also want to see for appendix A for the future projects not currently funded, just with the today's dollar amount? So you know, like. How
Yes.
Okay,
If it's not too much work.
okay.
I mean, you're wearing a lot of hats right now, so.
Are you close?
Like anything else, right, they are educated guesses. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Because some of those projects are pretty far out, some of them we've never had any opportunity to scope, so.
Yeah, there's a solar project.
Yes.
I don't have. Islands.
No,
Not happening.
I tip my hat to some of those projects on that list are there because of board conversations or otherwise that were included. So I just wanted the board to be aware we have not forgotten about them. But right now, there's not currently traction to do some of those. So for example, high strength waste receiving is, I believe, on that list. I can barely read it, but it is, yeah, it's WRP 44. That one, we're talking about putting in a linear generator, but it's $1 to $2 million of infrastructure needed to invest on site to build a high strength waste receiving facility. And until we get a letter of intent and serious commitment from some of the stakeholders in the region,
Right.
I do not believe personally it belongs on the 5-year CIP plan without more serious traction. And so that is what that orange list is intended. Some of those are master plan projects that are WRP 30, 36 and lower. Those were all previously identified. Anything above that are projects that are placeholders in the future that we don't have currently budgeted or planned for this 5-year CIP.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really see need to develop that. I think it's just too out there. Personally.
Just take maybe with the appendix B, eliminated projects, cost, price point.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be a range.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how I think.
Okay.
I'd like to make a statement.
Yes.
So just for the board to know, the finance committee will be spending a lot of time on this go forward. We had a fairly detailed conversation last week on this. For me, it's more of a situation of, can we do all these projects? Will we ever do all these projects? The answer is no. We've been super ultra conservative in the way that we plan capital, which is fine. But when it comes to putting that into what's going to be in the rate increases down the road, whatever else, I think we're going to take a magnifying glass to this pretty deep. Because the history here has been over the last 20 years, we've never, ever hit a capital plan based on what we've looked at. So my perspective is to go a little bit the other direction on this, so that we're going to be very tight. It needs to be reasonable. And not pie in the sky in every single corner case that's out there. Because I don't think we'd be doing justice to the ratepayers if we did otherwise. So I just wanted to let the board know that every single expenditure on here is going to go through the finance committee and get that in detail. And then it obviously comes to the board for approval at that point. But we will be the first line of defense on making sure that things look reasonable, so to speak. And remember, this is a living document. It's going to change every month, probably every quarter. And we'll probably only review it once or twice a year. So we need to keep that in mind. That's all I have to say.
And I think that kind of goes to what Dale was talking about.
Yeah.
previously,
Absolutely.
you know,
Let the
Keep it under
committee
the
do it.
microscope.
That's the point.
yeah, and be able to achieve what's be successful in the way.
Yeah, 250 million is a lot of money for one project, so
Yeah.
we'd be all over that like cheap soup.
Okay. Any further questions, comments?
I'll just comment, I really like the layout of this document. In particular, I really like the project sheets. I think that's terrific for people who want to get an understanding of a project in a quick fashion. And so I would like to thank you for the layout of this document.
To that point, it speaks to how far things have come to create something like this. You know, when I was first on the board 30+ years ago, there was nothing close to it. So I think we're making a lot of progress.
It's a team effort and we all appreciate that. Everybody
Yeah.
doing a lot of work and it's the first draft of the first time we've done it this way. So just know continued improvement. So what we're looking for and input helps along the way. If there's something you think is missing for all years. So. But, you know, it was a lot of meetings in terms of staff to come up with goals and projects.
Great. Appreciate the hard work and the direction here. So seeing no public comments, let's move on to the Placer County lap code.
Thank you.
All right, as some of you are likely aware, there is a open call for nominations to fill a regular special district representative seat for the 26-30 term. We currently have one of our board members is an alternate. They are asking town managers and board clerks for any input from the boards on nominations. So given that, I'll leave this up to the board to discuss if there is anyone that would like to make a nomination.
So can you go from alternate to that slot, or that's not how that works?
I would have to run.
Yeah. Are you going to run?
No, I'm not going to run. In fact, I'm going to endorse Judy Friedman from
You will.
CDP.
She's already on.
Yeah, but she has to run again. Her term's coming up.
Oh, so this,
That's what, it's a term.
this is her term expiring?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will say that having attended quite a few meetings, she does a very good job and she has my support. So,
From a hearing nomination for Judy Friedman there, or she doesn't need to be nominated, she's stand up.
I think it would be good if we nominated her. So I will entertain a motion to nominate Judy Friedman.
So moved.
Do you have any questions?
I'll second.
Okay, you look like you have a question about something.
No.
She's a dog with a bone, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Judy is.
Not many things get by her.
Yeah,
That's
no.
for sure.
So maybe it's usual, but that's exciting.
So
Comments, second. Hansford,
and with that, a roll call.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Hansford,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes,
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And with that, it's time for the department reports. And Michael, I believe you're number one.
Morning, board of directors. Michael Peak, Operations Department Manager. Give the Operations Department report.
The file didn't even pay.
I got you, Michael.
All right, we're winging it. Okay, so not too much, this month. We had a couple of little pictures in there, but that's okay. Not too much, for operations. We finished the, repairs on filter 3 and we were able to put the media back in and that's back in service. Thank you to maintenance for the repairs in there. The Tahoe Expeditionary, Academy did a plant tour. They're usually here once a year. They're 5th grade, 6th grade classes. That went well. We toured the Modesto wastewater treatment facility with the Corolla engineering team since they had some of the facilities that we're looking at moving forward with, especially with the biological treatment and the filters. We painted some piping and valves in Chem Pump Station where we've done some replacements just to make it, keep it looking nice. And digester feed box cleaning, which we had to facilitate with the factor truck. Other than that, we met all our discharge requirements, which was the main thing for the month. Questions for the operation?
The expeditionary school, do we do that with any other classes with?
Sometimes Truckee Unified will come, it depends on the teacher and if they want to come out here, so.
Okay.
We do, but it's the last 2 years, it's mostly really.
Yeah, it was really fun seeing the kids' faces.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun.
Do you learn anything good from the Modesto?
We did, definitely some, their facilities, you know, a little bit bigger than ours, but not that much bigger. Their main filter, their main membrane filters that they had that we were looking at would be sized about kind of like what we'd be sized for. So it was good to see them actually functioning and how it got set up. And it was good to talk to their team on some of the things that they had ran into that, hey, make sure you know, think about these things and address this, and this is how we run it. It's been, you know, whether it's been good or not, they've had great success with their filtration, so.
Do they put their treated water back into water for the fields and agriculture?
They do, they've got quite a bit going on actually down there because of, you know, all the water usage that they do have. They've got some ponds that are, I mean, upwards of 1 billion gallons or a couple of billion gallons. I can't remember. Do you remember what the number was? It's something like a huge amount of water storage. So a lot of their industrial treated water goes out to these ponds and actually mixes in. So it's become so diluted that they don't even have to do any of the treatments to the industrial stuff, and they can still utilize that because they have a lot of nutrients in it and stuff. They can utilize it for downstream agriculture and stuff. And so, yeah, it's a really neat facility and it's huge, but overall their flow isn't that much more than us. But it was pretty neat. And their their primary facility is across town and they pump a bunch of stuff over there. So it was definitely interesting. We learned a lot. Great.
Dale, any questions?
None.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
You want to use this phone?
No, sorry, that goes pretty good. Thank you.
No problem.
One is that you all could make it today, and it was a treacherous drive up, so making it. Okay, so for the months of December and January, we continued the project support for digestion improvements, nutrient removal, the redundant server project, which is nearing an end, SCADA upgrade project, and as you heard earlier, the network upgrade project. Some of the notable tasks for the months, try to condense the list so you didn't get too much here for one report. We repaired a wall leak in one of the janitor's closets. We found a broken pipe in the wall and it really kind of destroyed the walls in there. So had to remodel that. We excavated and repaired a pipe for a sump at the dewatering building that turned into a fairly large project. We had a contractor on site. do some asphalt work, and it turned out pretty well, but that was a big repair. There may be some good pictures in there, if those are in there. We'll get to those in just a moment. We replaced the surface wash assembly in filter number 3. Also another large job. Thank you to everybody involved with the safety aspect of that, keeping our folks, our entrance safe. We repaired the dewatering crossover over conveyors, all the hydraulic hoses, both the watering centrifuges. We completed all the lights or upgraded all the lights in new AWT and the IT offices. Got them all up to LEDs. It's been kind of an ongoing thing as we can replace and get rid of these old incandescents that are around the plant. We're nearing the end of that as well. We replaced some stir fans on some of our critical VNR influent pump station VFDs, and did some PMs and did the PLC batteries all throughout the plant, and especially VNR. And then we modified some Huber panels with some additional breakers so that we have a little bit better redundancy. So circuit breaker fails, doesn't take the whole system down. We still have 3 unfilled positions, 2 of which I'm sure you saw on the list from earlier that we are assessing for potential elimination, and 1 of which we have some additional interviews scheduled. We're trying real hard to get a SCADA specialist, and so we're working diligently. So next week we've got 5 interviews up. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get some. Work orders, we actually accomplished quite a bit over the past couple of months, given the, the cold and the outdoor temperatures. Make it difficult to do what we do, but we knocked out quite a bit for the month, so nothing spectacular to report there. And if we got some pictures, that'd be some. All right, up to the left, you can see we had our man lift up there doing the AWT lights. Those are a challenge, trying to reach over a lot of the old equipment in AWT. To the right there, that's the Huber panel, with our newer E&I technicians installing those circuit breakers. And then down below, you'll see filter number 3. That's the port that we have to enter into, and we have to send folks in there to do that work to replace that surface wash. So not a fun job, but necessary. And thanks for operations too for their help and support getting that done. All right, and these are those pictures there for that excavation for the sump pump. We had to do quite a bit of work. What started off as a leaky pipe turned into quite the repair where we had to pull back the asphalt, trench that out, and get folks in there to replace that whole pipe, because this is a facility that is going to exist long into the future, well beyond the NREM project. So it made sense to spend the money and do this thoroughly. And that's all I've got.
Is that an indication that there might be more pipes like that throughout the system?
It's very possible. It is very possible. It depends on the year that it was installed and which phase of the plant upgrades. It is possible that we see these things. So a lot of this, fortunately, a lot of the older pipe will be eliminated within, thankfully, especially the older infrastructure. That still could pop up here and there, and it's something that we have to be mindful of. And as we're aware of it, we'll certainly stay on top of it and do our best to bolster that system so that it will last at least as long as the NREM project. So,
Thank you. Questions, Dale?
Done?
So I'm trying to imagine these fiber lines, these fiber optic lines we're gonna put in. Oh, how fat are these lines? Are they like
they're
big?
tiny.
Oh, they're tiny.
They're tiny. Yeah, the little bundles. It looks like a big cable that'll have multiple conductors in it. We're looking at somewhere between 12 and 16 fibers that are inside there, all individually shielded. So one big cable with these tiny little flexible fiber cables that just pass light information, digital information over light. So they're very small, and they can be sensitive too. So we have to be careful on bend radiuses and things like that. So, they can be delicate. The ones that we have currently in the plant now are pretty old, and they do get brittle over time.
One other question.
Sure.
So when we have repairs like the building sump repair, I'm thinking, Liz, we have a line item in our budget that is for just general repairs around the plant that that gets taken care of in that line, I think. So,
Go ahead.
Ask the question again.
yeah, so when we get things like this sump repair, excuse me, that is not an anticipated cost, you know, and it's not in the CIP, it's just a routine type of replacement repair. I'm thinking we do have a line item in our budget that accounts for those types of things coming up.
We do, and that's something that I work with maintenance. Paul, specifically, we talked heading into these mid-year projections and trying to figure out, because the GL has very specific asset line items that we don't present at this level. So trying to figure out, you know, we may have budgeted for this thing to break, but this other thing broke. So we're trying to kind of put that all together. But yes, 100% it lives in that supply and repair line.
We're spending a considerable amount of time talking to how to make improvements year over year on how we forecast for these types of things and how we account for unanticipated repairs. This was a big year for unanticipated repairs, an abnormal year, as we'll see in the coming months as we start talking more about this.
So is there a final dollar figure on the repair of this?
Oh, gosh. Off the top of my head,
Because we had people working on it internally, but we had to bring in a contractor.
correct, and I just cannot remember the dollar figure off the top. I can get that information for you, bring it back for the next meeting. Yeah,
That'd be great.
absolutely. Yeah. I apologize. I probably could have told you yesterday, but
Yeah. Any further questions, comments? Okay. Let's move on to Scott, you're back up.
Yeah. Third time's charm, right? Morning, board members, Scott Fleming, Technical Services Manager, Tech Services Department report. Starting to sound like a broken record, but some of the ongoing projects you've been hearing about, digestion improvements, we just received the 60% design deliverable for that project last week. We're reviewing that now. There is ongoing talks for equipment procurement contracts. So we've talked about this previously with you. So BKS, Josh and Gavin have been helping us with ongoing talks with manufacturers for some of the terms of that for the linear generator. And then we also are looking at waste gas burner as well for pre-purchase. Construction management RFP, we are holding on that as we review the 60% design deliverable and get comments back to the consultant. This one will likely issue the RFP out as that schedule kind of develops and gets more dialed in. As I've mentioned in previous board meetings, we're reluctant to engage a construction manager until we definitively know when the project's going to be finalized for design. So we don't want to put the RFP up too soon and they're waiting with certain dates and expectations. So once the schedule is finalized, more likely at a 90% level, feel confident with that project with the construction management services. And then we are anticipating a scope and fee amendment forthcoming from Brown and Caldwell for the project as well. This was the first project that it was the last project we didn't request a contingency on, and this was the one that was kind of a catalyst for Director Wilson recommending moving forward for future projects that staff get authorization for contingency. So right now we are not authorized to spend anything over what the original contract amount was. And so with that, we do need to come back to the board to get approval for that follow-up for scope and fee, as we have no contingency for that project. Nutrient removal improvements project, Corolla's been knocking it out. It's great English. We've received design information memorandums 1, 2, and 3 for them. These are kind of the meat of the preliminary design report. Staff are reviewing them in draft form now. We met on design information memorandum 1 workshop was completed last month, and pretty clear project definition, nothing really outside of the anticipated scope of what we expected for the project. DIM 2 is the ultraviolet disinfection, and DIM 3 is the phosphorus sequestration and solids handling technologies. We are meeting with Corolla tomorrow to go over those design memorandums to hopefully get action out of them to finalize equipment selections. You'll hear next month, I'm sure, either from Paul, Michael, or myself. Staff did just return from a trip to Salt Lake City. I don't have any photos because I missed the board packet for it, but we'll include some for next month and talk more about that. But it was a great trip. Had a good time learning from other facilities and folks about how they're handling phosphorus sequestration with some newer technologies and how they could be potentially implemented here with one of the two preferred alternatives being selected hopefully tomorrow. And then, yeah, RAD is continuing to finalize, that's that, I forgot what the acronym stands for. It's the public outreach team for developing that board public facing website, which is project specific. So we're hoping to go live in the next couple of weeks with that website and hopefully get the board to check it out and come up with some cool ideas. And they've got like a public interfacing name that's not such a mouthful and all sorts of fun things. Network upgrades project, scheduling the kickoff meeting, if approved, it was approved today. So we'll get into contract execution with Liz and Jason. Liz reviewing all the necessary financials and insurance and liabilities and Jason signing it, and then get a kickoff meeting going for that one. On the laboratory activity side, we continued California Department of Public Health COVID sampling. We completed all of the proficiency testing required for 2025 and passed without issue. And then staff attended a TNI conference in Boston in January. You can get photos from that as well. And then also IT attended a conference too. You'll see next month. On the IT side, they had 27 complete work tickets, 12 in progress and 3 new as when I checked this board packet. They're continuing to work with the administration group and Liz on DocuSign implementation for contracts. The permit portal, last I heard, everything's been running well. I think it went down briefly for a short stint and they got back up and going again. So it was a great job by both admin and IT, and Lucas over here working hard on that one. Let's get it up and live. Sonic wall, firewall security work, that's going to be ongoing, continuous pretty much every month. We just have to keep staying up on our game with that. And then IT is working on looking into a project as it pertains to our existing local drives. So we have network drives here, or NAS, that serve as our primary storing house for most of our documents and contracts, et cetera. And we'd like to consider moving a lot of that over into SharePoint long-term. And so Luke and Lucas will be looking into the steps needed to get a consultant to help facilitate us get that moved over. Secondary internet service provider Optimum fiber work is complete, as last I heard. So we now have backup internet if AT&T were to go down. So it was a great job by Luke and Lucas getting that one done. And then they are working on the initial testing for the zero trust network architecture. Any questions on the technical services?
Quick one. Corollo, I know that they've had several of they call them camps in the past. Are there any scheduled for the future?
There is a camp planned towards the end of May or June, I think, once the preliminary design report's bundled up.
Okay.
So the way it's going to work with this project is there's a bunch of technical service, or sorry, DIMs, I should say, design information memorandums they're putting together. These are going to be kind of like the building blocks to push together a whole preliminary design report. That is the conceptual design in the sense. So they did conceptual design, we do a PDR, and then we move into final design. That camp will come at the end of that PDR.
Okay.
And so I have a feeling there's some board interest I'm picking up maybe at trying to facilitate, and I'll turn to Jason here and maybe.
Yeah, it's something we discussed at the finance committee as well. I was gonna bring up during the report is effectively, but no, it's cool. Don't worry about it. I think it'd probably be wise of us to set a date for us to have a meeting. Maybe Corollo attends, maybe not. I think we're qualified enough to provide you with what's going on. But just a really thorough update, what we've been reading, what we've been reviewing, what we've been discussing, decisions that have been made, ways the lens have changed, and because the camps, what ends up happening is it's 98% jargon, and it can be kind of tough to, if you haven't done anything prior, just jumping right into one of those camps can be a lot. And so. Yeah, I think we could probably look into, it's something that Liz and I have a little bit of an interest in doing, forming study sessions for the board, where we can talk about project specifics, we can talk about operations, lots of opportunities for that. So I think this would probably be a good place.
Okay. Great. Yeah, just from a date standpoint, you can give us more for decent time to plan.
Sure.
Much
Yeah, you
appreciated.
can provide remote availability as well. So.
Okay. Any further questions? Dale, any?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks for asking, Scott.
Alrighty. Thank you, Scott. And it looks like now back to Liz.
Me again. It's still morning though, so we're headed in the right direction. I'll be quick with the admin report and just try to highlight what we haven't talked about in the meeting, except on the risk and safety side. Again, welcome, Bill. I know he's sitting there in the audience. One of the things that I've asked him to help develop is to come up with some metrics for us to talk about here under the admin report as it relates to safety. So more exciting things to come there. From the finance side of the house, you heard all the things that we were working on, wrapping up bond issuance, getting ready for our projections. On the billing side, aside from doing general duties, as was mentioned in Scott's presentation, the new permit portal rolled out. There was training, troubleshooting, continued development. So we are having a little bit of growing pains. It's technology and we took a big leap into it, but all the member agencies have been great about working with us to keep those permits rolling. Two other things I'd like to mention, billing customer service, Celeste and I are taking on the task of preparing the RFP for our upcoming rate and connection charge study. So ideally we'll get that out by the end of the month and get rolling on selecting a vendor for us to be able to do that. And then on the purchasing side, Kevin is spending some time working with operations and reviewing the expiring chemical contracts and preparing to bid some of those chemicals as we head into FY27. And those are the main points from admin. Any questions? Stunned silence, I'll take it. You guys still have an agenda to go.
All righty. Yeah. Thank you, Liz.
Uh-huh.
Any questions whatsoever? I'm sorry, Paul.
I had an answer for you from your earlier question.
Oh,
I
great.
apologize for the interruption.
No problem.
It was 18,200 because they were limited in scope. We performed most of the work. They only did the excavation and backfilling and the asphalting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All righty. And with that, I think we move on to Jason.
So, again, this is usually a reiteration of what's come from the other departments. Been doing the normal area general managers meetings, trying to stay, connected with what's going on in the community. We had the S&P rating meeting, which was kind of an interesting experience. You had a little bit of some photo op bond, financing and signing documents. That was kind of cool. I've been working directly with Scott and Liz on the CIP quite a bit. Public outreach, that is maturing not only from the perspective of the project, but also just generally speaking. So we've got a pretty full schedule of events we plan on attending this spring. Continuing just with the major projects. As was mentioned, staff went to a couple other facilities in Desto, Utah, and came back with a lot of good information. We did safety training for CPR first aid AED. That was cool. Interesting take on it this time. It's always it gets boring, so sometimes you get a good instructor that kind of makes it interesting. Had some tours, was on board in Bill. And I want to thank the board very much for all of your flexibility and working with Becky Smith on getting questionnaires filled out and getting the information available for the workshops that are upcoming. I think those are going to be a really, really cool opportunity for a lot of growth. So, and we do have CWA conferences coming in September. We have a handful of people going to that. That's always a good thing. Questions from the board?
I don't see any. So with that, now we move on to the closed session. So can we take a 5-minute break and
Yes, let's.
come back in? Okay, we are back in open session.
11:24.
Yes, and any further comments, questions from the board of directors? Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting.
Do we have?
Move to adjourn.
Oh, wait.
Wait a minute. Is there any report from the closed session? Is
No
there,
action taken.
Yeah, no action taken.
there's no reportable action to
Got it.
provide? in the closed session?
No reportable action taken.
And now the.
Now we can concentrate.